What's going on, everybody? Today we are talking Doctor Who Season 1, Episode 8, Empire of Death. This is the conclusion of our two-part season finale, which began with the legend of Ruby Sunday last week, and that episode was one that was doing a lot of build up, a lot of setup leading to the reveal of Sutekh at the end of the episode. And so this second part here had a lot of work to do in giving us a satisfying conclusion to this first season finale of the second Russell T Davies era and of the first Ncuti Gatwa era, and I have to say that it left me a little bit underwhelmed. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. The episode picks up where we left off last week, with the Doctor realizing that Susan Triad is, in fact, not his granddaughter and is instead a harbinger for Sutekh, one of two harbingers of Sutekh that gets revealed in the legend of Ruby Sunday, the other being Harriet, who works for Unit HQ. The Doctor is basically frozen in place. He is not really able to do anything but watch as Susan unleashes the dust of death, which eliminates everyone in its path, except for the Doctor and Mel, who head back over to unit headquarters, in the process seeing all of the death and destruction that is being created by Sutekh. And the Doctor really has to come to grips with it when Kate, who has made her final stand with the rest of her security team at Unit HQ, basically tells the Doctor, "This is it. I hope that you can send this god back to hell. I know that birds will sing again one day, and they are erased from history, erased from time." This is a really interesting thing that we have here. As I said last week, that I thought that Sutekh was going to be a villain that was a lot more difficult to defeat here. That essentially, because he is a god of death, that there isn't too much you can do to reverse death. There isn't too much that you can do to stop death in its tracks before it happens. And so I knew going into this episode that the Doctor was going to have a battle unlike anything that he had encountered before. My issue with a lot of this episode, and I think other people have kind of echoed the sentiment a little bit, is that there was all of this buildup of Sutekh. I know that this is a villain that a lot of people who grew up with the classic show were very excited to see back, and they were really bracing themselves for a conclusion here that was going to be satisfying, that was going to be something that lived up to Pyramids of Mars. But the problem is that I feel like it really didn't. I have not seen Pyramids of Mars, and so I was not quite sure what it was that Sutekh's thing was. I really didn't know what to expect going into this episode and what kind of destruction he would bring, and I was very impressed with the sequence that we got at the beginning of the episode here, where the Doctor is, as I said, only able to watch as everyone around him dies and is reduced to dust and essentially dragged to hell, I think. And that was a really powerful kind of thing to see on Doctor Who here. I love as they're driving around and there's this dust cloud that is just incredibly hard to outrun, and they're just seeing all of this destruction happening and are unable to really do anything but run. And the problem with it is that I feel that's as exciting as the episode gets. There's a lot of great work here in terms of the effect of what Sutekh has done, but I feel like after everything is wiped out, there's really nothing else for Sutekh to do in the episode here except be menacing as he faces down with the Doctor and is essentially the rest of the time just guarding the TARDIS as his throne, and so that was a bit disappointing. I do like that we do get the reveal of who Susan Triad really is. Last week, I said in my video that I think that Susan is a person that because she is connected to Sutekh, that she is someone that got sprinkled throughout the Doctor's timeline, and that appears to be what has happened here, with the Doctor essentially saying that Susan Triad is a perception filter. She is someone that was created whole cloth by Sutekh because he found out who Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter, is because he was connected to the TARDIS, he was connected to the Doctor's memories, that he was then able to create this person that he dropped into the Doctor's timeline no matter where the Doctor went, and she was essentially a perception filter similar to how the TARDIS functions. And I did like that explanation. That is something that I thought was kind of the most obvious explanation for who she is, and so I like that we did get that answer there. But like I said, beyond this point in the story, it just feels like Sutekh is there to be this menacing figure, which, don't get me wrong, he is, and I do love the face-offs between the Doctor and Sutekh here, but I just think this is kind of where the episode hits its climax in terms of what Sutekh is doing, that I don't really feel like the setup from the first part was really doing all that much. That being said, I think this is Ncuti Gatwa's strongest episode by far. He really portrays the alien nature of the Doctor. He really portrays the hero that I think the Doctor is and always has been, where the Doctor is not afraid to go up against Sutekh. He is not afraid to say that he is going to kill Sutekh, that he is going to save the day. We get that really powerful scene where the Doctor, Ruby, and Mel are able to get into the memory TARDIS and are able to take it into the universe and see kind of how bad the destruction is, that once the Doctor sees that everything is gone and he comes to the realization that he has essentially laid a trap for the entire universe unwittingly over billions of years of his travels, that is something that carries a lot of weight with him, and we see Ncuti just give this big wail, this big scream that I think really embodies all of the weight of what has happened, and I think that is something that is so powerful. It is something that I don't think we've really gotten from him so far this season. We definitely got a little bit of it in Dot and Bubble, and that is a performance that I think is really impactful and really works, even with only the short amount of time that he's on screen. But here, it really, really feels like we get the impact of billions of years of life and what that has meant for the human race and really all races that the Doctor has come into contact with. We've seen the Doctor have to kind of reckon with the fact that his being, his name, has become so powerful that there are alien races out there that are scared of him. We saw in season 6 with the Pawns having lost their daughter that the Doctor has to kind of reckon with the fact that he has put his friends and their kid in danger simply because these other races are so scared of him because of the thousands of years that he has lived and the things that he has done. But here, I really feel like the impact is less on the name of the Doctor and more on the fact that he is a traveler that has been traveling around just for fun for billions of years, and something as harmless as that has now created a situation where there's all these arbingers that have been placed on all of these planets throughout his timeline, and now the world has come to an end simply because he dared to travel, because he dared to explore these new worlds. And I think that is really something that is interesting to kind of deal with here. I will give Russell credit where credit is due. I do think that in the Chibnall era, we did not really get a satisfying conclusion to the flux and the destruction of the entire universe, and I do think that since he has been back, Russell has really been trying to show that, yes, the Doctor is very much impacted by the things that he has done and the things that he has directly or indirectly caused to happen. And so I think since the 60th anniversary specials, we have really seen that side of the Doctor. We have really seen the way in which he is impacted and feels the weight of the things that are happening around him because he feels responsible for those things. One of the things that does kind of bug me about the breakdown that he has in the TARDIS is that it is kind of another example where he gives up. And it is a moment of weakness that is understandable, and we do obviously see him kind of be able to rally from that initial breakdown, but that is something that seemingly happens off screen, and we don't really see the motivation behind why he continues to fight, and I really wish that we were getting that more in the season. I did like in last week's episode when we had the Doctor have that breakdown right before he went in to go see Susan Triad, and Mel kind of snapped him out of it, telling him he needs to buck up because they have bigger fish to fry. And yes, he made a mistake, but let's go and fix it. And that is something that I wish we had in this episode, because I really think the Doctor needs to understand that just as much as he can be there for other people, they can be there for him too. I think that is something that is really important in a story about healing oneself, and I just wish that we had kind of started to see the Doctor be able to pick himself up, because I really feel like we're getting a bit too mopey and not really seeing what kind of flips the switch for him. I did really like the scene with the grieving mother and how we learn more about what Sutekh has actually done here. He is slowly killing the universe. He is slowly killing people's memories right before he kills them as well, which I think is something that is really impactful, and it's a very somber moment, and this could be something that really gives the Doctor the ability to kind of rally, because he feels so bad for this woman that he wants to do anything that he possibly can to give her back the life that she deserves. But as I said, this is something that I wish the episode had explored a little bit more. Aside from Ncuti Gatwa, this is also a really strong Ruby episode. I really like Millie Gibson in this episode, where we get to finally find out who it is that Ruby's mother is. I really like the way that she is more active in this episode. We see her again in lockstep with the Doctor as we get this final confrontation between the Doctor, Ruby, and Sutekh. And I think it is a really clever way that we get to see the way that they communicate with one another and are able to pull off this big ruse that allows them to get close enough to Sutekh. I will say that I still am not very impressed with the way that the Doctor and Ruby's relationship has been handled this season. I think that Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson have incredible chemistry, and you do see it with the Doctor and Ruby. I don't think it is completely absent. There's just not enough time for them to be together, that the moments where they're working really well together hit as hard as they should. I always feel like there is something lacking in their interactions with one another, even though I can believe everything it is that they're doing. A lot of people said about the episode Rogue that they didn't like the Ruby fake-out death, that it didn't make sense with the way that it was edited, that she survived that encounter with the Cholder. And so I do like here that we get another fake-out. We get a scene where we see a conversation between the Doctor and Ruby in a reasonable amount of time, that we are actually with Mel as she is being overtaken by Sutekh and made to be a vessel of Sutekh, that there is this whole other conversation with the Doctor and Ruby going on that we don't see, where they are coming up with a plan to defeat Sutekh, and I thought it was really well done in that way, so that there wasn't more confusion there like we got with Rogue. And it really led to a great reveal. It really showed the way that the Doctor and Ruby are in lockstep with each other, and I thought there was a lot of emotion in Ruby's performance, in Millie Gibson's performance, rather, that really sold that moment, so that you don't realize what's coming until it happens. Of course, this is another Russell T Davies season finale where we get a Deus Ex Machina. We get a situation where the characters have been backed into a corner, and then there is just this magical solution that gets pulled out at the last moment, something that the audience can't really have conceived of before this moment, just for the purposes of having this big, grand reveal. And I do agree with it, but I do think that there were threads that were kind of planted in the episode before this point that does kind of sell the reveal. It does kind of make it make sense. Again, as I said, we don't get to see the conversation with the Doctor and Ruby because we are with Mel at that point, and so it doesn't feel like the episode necessarily treated in that way. I also love the fact that we get the whistle from the memory TARDIS, and that the Doctor kind of explains it in the beginning of the episode by saying that all of these things that are in the memory TARDIS are things that have been in every TARDIS in every situation since the beginning of time. And I do like that, essentially like a Chekhov's gun, this is something that allows the Doctor to save the day. I don't remember if we see the leash before this point. I'm gonna assume that we do. And so, again, this really didn't sit too badly with me, even though, again, I do realize that this was absolutely a Deus Ex Machina, which is typical of Russell T Davies' work. When comparing it to something like Last of the Time Lords from Season 3, I do think there's enough here where I feel satisfied with the solution that they gave us, even if I can recognize that this was kind of an easy out. That being said, I love the entire final sequence between the Doctor and Sutekh, where Sutekh has been tethered to the original TARDIS, and the Doctor takes him through the time vortex, except now he is not able to hold on. He is just holding on by the skin of his teeth. And I love that the Doctor is really getting his big I am the Doctor moment, where he is saying, I took you through all of time and space, and so now I'm going to take you to death. And in doing so, he is able to bring everybody back. He is able to create life from death, and I think that that is a really powerful metaphor. I think it is a very powerful sequence that we get where Ncuti is really able to show that he is someone that understands what the Doctor does, and he is really able to show himself as the hero of the day, because I don't think that we have quite gotten that in this season of Doctor Who. And so I really, really love everything about this sequence here. I think it is very powerful that we get the clip of the Fourth Doctor talking to Sarah Jane in the time window about how the Osirians didn't want to kill Sutekh because they wanted to be better than him. And then the Doctor is essentially forced to kill Sutekh in order to bring everybody back. I think that that is a very interesting kind of dichotomy that we have going here. We've definitely seen the Doctor have to do things that go against his moral code. We have seen him do that in situations in which he's just simply feeling vengeful. And so it is really cool, though, to have him in a space where he's simply trying to do the right thing, and in doing the right thing, he is put in the impossible situation where he can't be better than Sutekh in order to win the day. I'll say that aside from the stuff that we get from the Doctor and Ruby in this episode, it kind of feels like everyone else falls to the wayside here. We, of course, can understand that people like Rose Noble and Kate Stewart get pushed to the wayside because they are literally eliminated from the universe, but it is kind of disappointing to see them utilized in that way. I do feel like Kate Stewart, while she has been more interesting in the Russell T Davies era, hasn't had too much to do. I think the standoff between Unit HQ and Sutekh is really a comparison to what they did in their standoff with the Toymaker, and that was another situation in which they lose. And so it's interesting to see them continue to lose. I just don't know if that is a theme that is going to be explored and utilized as we get to see more of Unit throughout this era. I do think that it is an interesting point that Ruby asks whether or not Kate and any of the Unit HQ staff are able to remember where it is that they went during the time that they were essentially dead. And Kate Stewart says that she has little memories, little blips here and there of things that may have happened when she was away. And I do wonder if we are going to see them explore that at all throughout the rest of this era. I think it would be kind of interesting if they do, and I wonder if this is kind of teasing that. I know there are some narrative threads here that have not been threaded yet, and so maybe that is one of them, and I think that would be a really interesting thing to explore. Other than that, I really didn't like that Mel kind of got the short end of the stick there. I did love that scene in the memory TARDIS with the Doctor and Ruby and Mel as they see the scene of the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane, and then the 15th Doctor is reminiscing with Mel about meeting Einstein. I really liked that moment, and I wish there was more that we saw. I really liked at the beginning of the episode when the Doctor and Mel are running from the dust of death. That was a really cool scene that showed us some of Mel's personality as she was like, we've got work to do. All we can do is fight. I thought that that was really, really cool to see. But then I feel like the episode doesn't really know what to do with her. So then they essentially just make her a vessel for Sutekh, which I think that the actress for Mel, sorry, I'm blanking on her name, really does a good job of playing that side of Mel as a vessel for Sutekh. I just think that it's kind of uninteresting. I would have preferred to see her more with her relationship with the Doctor. There's some other narrative threads that we don't really get threaded here. We don't find out who Mrs. Flood is. We don't really see why she kind of revealed herself to Cherry Sunday, and we still don't understand why the fourth wall breaks keep happening, and so I think that this is something that is going to play into Season 2, and I'm hoping it doesn't play into the entire Ncuti Gatwa era, because while I do think the fantasy aspects of this season have been good, it's just not Doctor Who. It's not super entertaining. I want them to be focusing more on sci-fi and more sci-fi worlds, and so I'm hoping we kind of get back on track with that in these next few series here. But still, I'll be patient and kind of hope that we are going somewhere interesting with Season 2. Mrs. Flood kind of implies that we are going to a darker place with the Doctor, and so I don't know how we can get much darker here, but it should be interesting to see if they're able to pull it off. The final thing that I want to talk about here, of course, is the situation with Ruby and her biological mother. I think this was a beautiful scene. It really, really brought a tear to my eye both times that I watched this scene, and I really like the idea that Ruby's mother is just some normal human being. She isn't anyone that is truly remarkable. She is only important because of the importance of her relationship to Ruby and what Ruby thinks of her and what Sutek believed her to be. And so I do think that was a very interesting concept. I'm still very much confused about why it spontaneously snows whenever Ruby thinks about her family. I still don't understand why Sutek could not see Ruby's mom, why she was able to essentially shield herself from him. That being said, I still feel like this was a beautiful end to the episode. I loved the contrast between the Doctor and Ruby, as the Doctor is really putting a lot of his own emotional baggage on Ruby, telling her that if her mother wanted to find her all of these years, all of these days, she would have done it, and the fact that she didn't probably means that it's best to leave things alone. And of course, we know that he is really talking about his own stuff with Susan, and I just really love that Ruby immediately proves him wrong. This situation is so nice and gentle and so right that I really felt like it was very much impactful, and it was very much the reunion that we've been waiting for since the church on Ruby Road. And I really hope that this is kind of the seeds that we will get a Susan return here by the end of the Ncuti Gatwa era. I'm really hoping we get it by season 2. If we got it by the Christmas special, that would be even more exciting here. But I am hoping that they are not simply just teasing us with Susan's return and then not going to follow through on it. I am a little bit confused about whether Millie Gibson is going to be in season 2. I know that there was the announcement of Virata Sethu becoming the Doctor's new companion in season 2. We saw her as Mundy in Boom earlier in the season, and so I hope that we are still getting Ruby in season 2, because like I said, there is so much more that I think this season could have done with the Doctor and Ruby and their relationship, and so I would like to see it get more developed and get more weight to it in season 2. But if this was the last we saw of Ruby, I don't hate that final scene between her and the Doctor, because we really feel, we really understand that now that she has found her birth mother, now that she has found her birth father, that she has an adventure that is only just beginning, as the Doctor says. And so I really think that her choice to leave the TARDIS makes a lot of sense, because there is so much more for her to do with her family on Earth, and it is going to be disappointing if we don't see her again. But other people have been saying that they hope that if that's the case, if this is the final appearance of her as a companion proper, that we get something similar to a Martha return, where we see her in a couple of episodes throughout Ncuti's rest of his tenure. I think that would be a sufficient thing to do with the character. But as I said, I would prefer that she stay on as a companion for season 2 at least, because I think there's more to do there. All in all, I really like this season. It is not my favorite season by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that Ncuti and Millie Gibson do a great job in their respective roles. I think that I was very excited for each episode to come out and be able to discuss it with all of you, all of the online fandom, and so I am very excited for season 2. I am hoping, as I said, that we get to a more traditional format of Doctor Who as we go on here throughout this era, but I am very happy with the experimental episodes that we got in the season, and so if there's a little bit more of that, if there's something that kind of sets this era apart from the others, I'll be happy with that too. I am just very happy to be excited about Doctor Who again and be in a position where I get to talk about every episode in this manner because I think that it is a great show that deserves people that are really digging into it and really getting to enjoy it in this way. I think that makes the experience that much more exciting. That's going to be all for me for this video. Remember that if you like what you see, you can go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, making sure to hit the notification bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Till then, later guys.